Hello and welcome to the Movie Bunker podcast. It's me, Chris.
Me, Matt.
And today we're joined by Nick Semlyen. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me on. Excited to be here.
How are you getting on with the lockdown situation at the moment?
It's an interesting one because I am currently acting editor of Empire magazine. My boss Terry White is off on maternity leave for 6 months, so I've taken over the magazine. I picked a pretty good time to take over as Hollywood crashes and burns and films stop coming out and we're all working from home. And yeah, it's an interesting time to sort of learn how to edit a magazine. But no, it's going so far so good. Quite surreal, but you know we're making the best of it and putting some pretty cool stuff together, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking the other day about this subject, and films are still trickling out, but it's like a home cinema kind of medium. And is this, do you think, going to be the future? Are we going to be able to see? Are we going to see more of this because of the situation we're in, or do you think there's still going to be a real rush to get back out to the cinemas again?
I mean, I think when the cinemas reopen, there is going to be a mad rush as people I'm going to spend about 4 solid weeks in Picture House Central, I think, and eat all the pick and mix. I think people are going to be really excited to come out when we can, but who knows when that's going to be at the moment. I just don't know. But yeah, it is strange, isn't it, when the biggest film of the month is Extraction on Netflix. But
don't forget Trolls World Tour.
Trolls World Tour is another huge one. I'm excited. The thing that excites me about Extraction is Chris Hemsworth's character is called Tyler Rake.
Oh, wow.
It's almost as good as Vic Deakins from Broken Arrow, but we'll get into that.
A nice segue there, Nick. What film have you chosen to talk about?
Well, Broken Arrow, the 1996 John Woo action extravaganza set in the Utah desert with John Travolta and Christian Slater.
They are America's first line of defense. Best of friends.
Ready, Captain? Nap of the Earth. Here we go.
Fierce competitors.
Very nicely done. Almost as good as me.
Ready to protect our nation against any threat.
Carrying the nukes. Do you love having the power of God at your fingertips?
Not tonight, buddy.
But what if the enemy is one of them?
What the hell are you doing?
We got pilots down.
We got ourselves a broken arrow.
A broken what? It's what we call it when we lose a nuclear weapon. I don't know what's scarier, losing nuclear weapons, or that it happens so often there's actually a term for it.
The only thing more dangerous than what he knows.
They believe they've got an exposed core. They got to send in a nuclear emergency search team. By the time they find us, we'll be gone.
Is what he's prepared to do.
$250 million by 0900 Utah time. If you have not... Good God. I don't know what the big deal is. I really don't.
But there's one thing.
Smile, boys. We're about to retire.
He didn't count on.
I know his mind works. You gotta let me go after him.
Outstanding, Hal. That's the spirit. Would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons?
And what are we doing?
If you enter the wrong code 3 times, the nuke goes dead.
Unless, of course, I already thought of that ahead of time. You just activated a nuclear warhead, my friend. The clock is ticking. Care for a Coke or something?
John Travolta.
You lose.
Christian Slater.
You're out of your mind.
Ain't it cool?
Broken Arrow. A John Woo film.
What a doozy it is, Matt, isn't it? I mean, have you seen this before, Matthew? You must have done.
I have, yeah. I was a massive John Woo fan, and then these films came out. Yeah, so I was a huge John Woo fan before he sort of made his Hollywood foray. So I picked all these films up straight away with fervent intention to watch them. But it's been a long time since I watched it, and I watched it. It's fresh. I watched it this morning.
I've never seen this movie, and I've been well aware of it, but I watched it last night. It did not disappoint, Nick, I must say. I'll go into a brief plot synopsis, and then we'll drill down into it a little bit more. But in terms of like IMDb's plot synopsis, it couldn't be simpler as terrorists steal nuclear warheads from the US military, but don't count on a pilot and park ranger spoiling their plans. Pretty vague, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, and I'm not sure terrorist is quite the right word. It's like with Die Hard, they're actually robbers rather than terrorists. I'm not sure if you could classify Travolta as being a terrorist. I don't know if that's his... I guess it is, right? I don't know, a bit fuzzy on the specifics. But yeah, it's pretty simple to follow, I think. You know, the movie starts, the first scene is the bad guy and the good guy hitting each other. And then they proceed to hit each other for another sort of 100 minutes.
It's like a cat and mouse before even the sort of adventure start. From the very get-go, you are aware that there is a one-upmanship going on with this unlikely duo.
Yeah, I quite like that first scene, actually. It's in the boxing ring. I mean, it's not a subtle scene. You've literally got them hitting each other and sort of explaining their mindsets, and Travolta is talking about rope-a-dope, which, comes into play later when he's sort of trying to trick everyone. There's a lot of misdirection in the film. But yeah, it's essentially the story of these two pilots who are piloting this $2 billion stealth aircraft, and then John Travolta has a secret plan to steal the 2 megaton nuclear warheads, which he does, and then he sort of carries them around in the desert, fondles them occasionally. And Christian Slater has to team up with Samantha Mathis, who's a park ranger. And yeah, like you say, it's sort of cat and mouse in the desert, and it's very silly.
John Travolta's having an absolute whale of a time, isn't he?
He is having the best time. I mean, there are many films where John Travolta is clearly having a good time, but I think this might be the one where he is having the best time. That's a big part of why I like this movie a lot, is Travolta is so over the top that it sort of starts to go back to the bottom again. Like, it's such a weird performance. Everything about it strange.
He goes a bit Nick Cage in this, doesn't he? I would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, he literally becomes Nick Cage a couple of years later in Faceoff. But in this film, yeah, he's very much the Nick Cage school of acting, where every time he enters a scene, it's even if he's already been in the film like 4 times, it goes into slow-mo. He gets his own theme tune. I love all the stuff he does with props in this film. Like, every scene he has a different prop. So one scene he's making a really big deal out of opening a can of Coke, and the next scene he's got an electric razor for some reason. He's just having a great time.
The slow-mo sections are kind of just focused on cigarette butts and all sorts of things. Where they choose to put the slow-mo in is really bizarre.
It's weird. It's very John Woo. That comes from him. But you're right, there's a bit early on where they're getting onto the aircraft and it just goes into slow-mo for no particular reason. It's a lot of... Someone will just take a puff of a cigarette and it will go into slow-mo. That's kind of, again, why I love this film, is it's little bits of weirdness. It's definitely not pure John Woo. I think Face-Off is more pure John Woo, but there's enough in it to make this really entertaining.
I think John Travolta in this more extravagantly smokes a cigarette than I've seen anyone smoke a cigarette. He really sells it as a pastime. It's just not just a habit for him, it's a whole flourish. There's a dance to it.
I've got to confess, so I saw this film when I was 16, and I was still at school, and I've got to admit that I had just started smoking when I saw this film, and I copied John Travolta's style of smoking a cigarette and thought it made me look really cool. He does, you're right, it's really flamboyant. He has his 2 fingers right out, and he's got making a big V, and then he's flipping his wrist around to pull it out of his mouth.
He goes deep with that cigarette. And with
deep on his cigarettes, yeah.
In his fingers. I'm an ex-smoker, and I never used to hold... I think I would copy that style now, but the way he goes in deep with the cigarette. There is plenty to talk about in terms of John Travolta, but there are other actors in this film, believe it or not, but they do their best, I guess, to try and bring to the table as much ham as they possibly can. So we mentioned Christian Slater, who I think is perfectly cast. I think most of the cast are actually spot on in terms of casting. I don't know anybody else who would have fitted into this role and done it any differently or better. But Christian Slater holds his own brilliantly in this movie.
Yeah, I really like him in it as well. I think it was his first proper action film, and then he did Hard Rain a couple of years later. Yeah. But he's just very good. You just can imagine him doing all kinds of action films. He's good at it. He looks cool. He looks cool with the 2 guns. He looks cool. He dives away from a lot of explosions in this film. And he's just really likable and wholesome in a way that Travolta is sort of super creepy and weird in this film, and he is the absolute opposite of that. And I kind of like that wholesomeness.
We've got Samantha Mathis in what is basically a completely dick-heavy movie. She is pretty much on the IMDb. She's the only woman cast member, I think, put on this page, which is she was pretty decent box office draw as well in terms of what movies she'd been in and up until around this movie.
Was this before or after Super Mario Brothers?
I think it's after, isn't it? Definitely.
So she still was getting roles after that. I kind of assumed that film would just kill everyone's career, but no offense.
Because for most of the cast, this is kind of peak for them, isn't it? It's this is John Travolta after Pulp Fiction. He's right on his he's doing about 3 films a year. Christian Slater again is on the back of all of his good work. I think for Travolta, this marks obviously his first kind of flamboyant bad guy. If we don't count Pulp Fiction, and it kind of typecasts him after this joint. If you like John Travolta in any bad role after this as a bad person, you got to kind of blame this film, right?
Yeah, I really like the casting in this film. I mean, it's interesting as well that you've got two sort of Tarantino protagonists facing off against each other. You've got, Christian Slater had done True Romance, I think 3 years before, and Travolta had done Pulp Fiction 2 years before. And you're right, they were both at their absolute peak, and they're just in proper movie star mode, like these two guys, like facing off against each other. And apparently Travolta was offered the Slater role, and he turned it down because he wanted to play the villain. I'm glad he did.
Why wouldn't you? What a meaty role for him. You mentioned Tarantino then, but you get Frank Whaley in this movie. But he was in Pulp Fiction, wasn't he, with John Travolta?
Yes.
The Paul Watt guy that gets it with his the Big Kahuna Burger guy. Initially, when you see some of these actors or some of the characters, introduced, you kind of misjudge how that's going to go in terms of who are the villains, who are the baddies, because it does do a lot of double takes in terms of, or switcheroos rather. Yeah, exactly. So Delroy Lindo, who's a classic character actor and is perfect for this kind of movie. Is like an action general. I don't know what he is, but cigar chewing character. He's fantastic, isn't he?
A lot of time for Delroy Lindo. Quite disappointed that he dies in this film, right? Like he's in the helicopter at the end. I mean, in this film, if you're in a helicopter, you're having a bad day because it is just it's helicopter mayhem. I think 4 helicopters blow up in this film. 2 of them in the final scene, like 1 minute apart. So I think, as I recall, it's sometimes hard with John Woo to keep track of everything that's going on. But I think Delroy Lindo gets killed, and I was quite disappointed in that because I really liked his character.
He does in I would say a semi-heroic way. They don't really give him an heroic send-off. He kind of supports Christian Slater, Hell's character, in terms of the final fight. But then he'll unfortunately just crashes in as a pilot, crashes into the bridge as the train goes into the tunnel. So it's not a really great send-off.
Not a good death because you can see they set up that tunnel is there ages in advance. And then the helicopter just crashes into it. It's not like a big surprise. So that's pretty poor steering.
The pilot got shot, didn't he? Unfortunately, which didn't go down very well for him.
It's not great. There's not any really great pilots in this because, is there a single flying thing that doesn't crash in this film?
I don't think so.
I mean, obviously the first one's a little bit on purpose, but each thing after that is just, if you're more than a foot off the ground, you're in big trouble in this film.
Bob Gunton plays the sort of the guy who we think is orchestrating or pulling the strings behind this whole operation of getting these nukes into this certain place. He's the
money man.
He's the money man. Pritchett he plays, and he's tutting and shaking his head in every situation. I mean, just what was he expecting? I mean, I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, has he met Vic Deakins before this day? Because I mean, he does not get on with Travolta's character. Yeah, I love Bob Gunton, and I wish he'd got more to do in this film. But I really enjoy everything that he does. He's just disapproving of everything of John Travolta's entire lifestyle and telling him to stop smoking.
Great death, though, right? So it's kind of worth it for that.
Very good death. Death by torch.
Death by torch. And a great hush beforehand.
Hush, hush. I actually I wrote that down. I had to write these notes. I've written hush, hush, because it's the way he delivers that line is perfect. But yeah, I was expecting Pritchett to live. I thought it was just a big punch in the neck, but it was severe. he died from that.
He immediately dies.
Yeah, when you consider people survive nuclear explosions in this film, and he gets hit by a torch and dies, you have to feel to yourself you're on the wrong end of the scriptwriter there.
It's a good death. Howie Long gets an amazing death as well. There's just a lot of great deaths. I think I was making notes and I just wrote great death when Howie Long goes flying off the train and then probably explodes in midair. It was just, and then obviously Travolta's death is amazing.
Yes.
Well, let's save that till last because it's worth having its own segment. I was going to say, the way that some of the characters are introduced, well, especially John Travolta's character, we can't ever really steer away too long before being dragged back to John Travolta's Vic Deakins in this, but his very presence on screen is always met with, like, he's got a kind of like a Snake Plissken theme tune, hasn't he? It's like that guitar. It's like Blue Hotel, or it's like a Chris Isaacs track in the background whenever he's playing. In fact, the score is by Hans Zimmer, which I was shocked at.
Shocked in a good way or shocked in a bad way?
It's a good score. It's, I think the thing everyone remembers is what you just mentioned, that sort of twangy guitar, sort of Morricone-esque westerny music that plays every time Travolta comes into a scene, and like during pretty much every scene he's in. Do you guys know about the Scream 2 thing?
No.
So this theme is also used in Scream 2, the same exact music. They used it every time David Arquette comes into a scene. They play it, and it was put in as temp music, but then apparently they just left it in. And so the Marco Beltrami, who did the score for Scream 2, went to the premiere and was quite surprised to find like music from another film in the middle of his score. And apparently Wes Craven just really liked it.
It's very chorally as well in places, isn't it?
Yeah, I love all the choral stuff. It's very woo. It's just so kind of operatic and flamboyant and over the top. I think the first time you see the Nukes, they have like, quite intense or choral music, but everything's like dialed up to 10.
With the Nukes, I've got a question. This is not aimed at
the Nukes,
right? Not aimed at this movie in general, but in all kind of action movies with nukes, why do they have a keypad that's massive in them? I don't understand the premise of that.
It's a really good question. It's a great question. I went back and reread the Roger Ebert review about an hour ago, and he makes a lot of he's quite angry about the keypads as well. Like, he's questioning why they put them on in the nuclear bomb factory. There's no possible reason, unless someone is like setting them off like a rogue terrorist. There is literally no reason to have a countdown.
Right, because they're meant to be dropped out of a plane, so it's not like, right now, quick, turn it on. It's like, oh, I let it go. It's it's hurtling towards the earth as we speak. Should I have done something with the keypad? It's like, oh no, sorry, someone will do it when it's on the ground. It's fine.
But there's a lot of switching around. It's on, it's off, it's off, it's on, it's in. The code's been changed. It's like it's a legit.
This film does two things really poorly. One is kind of the concept of the wilderness, and two is the concept of time. Both of which don't really track, because like at all points in this massive park, or parkland, open area, they're always about 2 foot from each other. It doesn't matter how lost one of them gets. It's like they to avoid a nuclear explosion, they go through an underground river, pop up in a lake, they walk 2 foot, and they find the other people again. It's just like the wilderness doesn't work this way, people. And in time, it's just like they had the whole thing where they had like about 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes they managed to go down a 2,000 foot shaft, back again. Yeah. They stopped and had a chat at one point. It's like, you haven't got time for that. You have to go now.
Why were Christian Slater and John Travolta's characters, why were they stealth bomber pilots? Because, here's the sound or the kind of the velocity of Vic Deakins' ego alone, you would hear that guy coming without anything. So the worst kind of idea.
You'd hear his theme tune playing.
Am I wrong in thinking that the stealth bomber is like the pinnacle of aircraft?
I think so. There's this bit in the film where they describe it as $2 billion, 800 mile an hour. Yeah, they're making out that this is the most. No one seems to be that bothered that the $2 billion aircraft explodes and they've lost it. I guess there are nukes.
Well, the whole US military as a whole don't seem too fussed with the whole, we've lost 2 nuclear bombs. Should we bother go getting them? No, let's send 4 blokes and a chopper pilot who's not very good, who just wants to eat chocolate bars. There seems to be very little hurry in this. What I didn't know about stealth bombers is that you could turn it on and off, the stealth, with a simple toggle switch. I thought like the whole reason that they were designed and shaped is that they were, by virtue, stealth, rather than quick. Now we're going to test the stealth, turn the stealth on. Oh, yep. Can't find him anymore. Completely gone. I don't know what the switch does. I really want to know what the switch did. I haven't seen anything so ridiculous in terms of aerodynamics until San Andreas, where Dwayne Johnson turns on auto hover on his helicopter and jumps out the side. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Quick, turn the stealth on.
Yeah, these are good points. I've not actually seen the movie Stealth, with Jamie Foxx, so I don't know if that's a more accurate portrayal.
I don't think that's more accurate for anything.
This is the movie the accompanying movie that you should watch prior to watching this. It might actually flesh out a little bit of your understanding of how stealth bombers work. But maybe that's for another podcast. I'm sure there's a stealth bombing podcast out there that you could download and listen to. All these answers and more to my.
It's hosted by two white middle-aged men, by any chance?
Probably. I tell you what I saw in this movie that surprised me. A very emotional Tuco from Breaking Bad turns up.
Tuco's in it. No, I didn't spot Tuco.
The crazy drugs guy in, obviously, the Mexican drugs guy in Breaking Bad. He's one of the generals that delivers the bad news about the catastrophe that might unfold if the nuclear bomb goes off.
Oh, yeah.
Tight. I love Tuco. I didn't spot him. Damn it. I didn't expect to see him in military uniform. I think that was probably what threw me.
It's a surprise. Now I'm doubting myself now.
I'm annoyed by him because he said he used two different ways to describe the same number. It's a really small thing, but I get bugged by this stuff. He said 250,000 and then a further 250,000. It's like, hold on. That's the same number.
Maths.
I got annoyed by that.
Doesn't want to repeat himself. Kurtwood Smith is in this. Always good to see him. Sort of telling someone to wake up the president. That tends to be what he does in these kind of films.
Shane Toub, who plays Iron Man's doctor in the first one, he's the guy that gets killed by the hammer.
Oh, yes. Hammer time. I've written that down in one of my notes as well.
Hammer time.
This is appropriate. The Kurtwood Smith character, the Secretary of Defence, he's initially, I thought, would be a baddie as well. I thought he was going to be part in on this whole operation, but it was nice to see him in quite a pleasant role for a change.
No, 100%. I definitely remember. So this was the first John Woo film I saw in the cinema. So I think that's partly why I have such a soft spot for it. I'd seen Hard Target on a videotape that was kind of at school being passed around, but this was the first one I saw properly, big and loud. And I remember expecting there to be more skullduggery. You expect the briefing room to have a baddie, who's actually working, whether it's Delroy Lindo or the obvious one's Kurtwood Smith. Or Tuco.
Yeah.
But no, it feels like they could have thrown in another twist.
There is another actor in this, which is the chap who play. Isn't he married to? Oh God, sorry.
You're going to need some more words in here, Chris.
He's married to Anakin's mum or the stepdad. Isn't he in?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm missing the actual title of the film, which would help, which is Phantom Menace. He's the guy in the little hover wheelchair.
I can't remember him.
Who's in this? I can't remember who's in this.
He's the gruff kind of... I'm trying to find it now. I'm doubting myself. Maybe I've watched a completely different movie.
No. Jack Thompson. Is that him?
Well, there's a couple of people on the IMDb page which have not got photos.
Yeah, so, Jack Thompson. He's the guy in the wheelchair in Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and he's in this and very good he is too.
There's a guy in a wheelchair in the Phantom Menace. I remember Yoda floating around in the little thing on Attack of the Clones, but I can't remember the... Yeah, I'll have to go back and... No, I'm not going to rewatch it.
No. There's no need for that.
You tweeted a little bit a while ago about the Volvo quote in this, which is amazing. What is that all about?
It's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, it turns out that Travolta's master plan is to make enough money that he can buy 5% of Volvo stock. And he then has a little monologue about Volvo, which I couldn't remember until this last time I saw it. No memory of Volvo being an integral part of this film. But he admires Volvo because they make really safe automobiles. And he wants to take all this money and retire and just be happy that he's putting some safe cars out into the world. It's weird,
This
isn't
is
it?
why there's a doubt, he's a terrorist, right? Because, Ed Harris in The Rock, you kind of go, oh, he's doing it for a good reason. And you're like, oh, John Travolta, can we class him as a terrorist? Because he just wants really to... make safe cars. It's a strange reason for his whole thing. Is like, yeah, I'm going to steal a nuclear bomb and definitely set one off. just so I can make sure that Volvo have got a secure future in the world.
He's not investing in aircraft, is he? He's seen enough explode during the course of this movie.
Yeah, he knows how tricky they are to fly.
The thing is about John Travolta is the fact in this character, the character in this movie is that everything goes wrong, nothing goes right for him. Yet he's almost like Trump in a way. Is that he's sort of blind to all the mistakes and the chaos going around him, and just goes, nope, everything's fine. It's all part
of the plan.
It's not until the very last minute when he's speared by that missile.
I mean, his plan is absolute nonsense. I still don't know where that train comes from, because his plan has been foiled so many times, and then he just has a train all ready to go with another helicopter on it, and it's hard to follow what his plot is. You know, you watch Die Hard and Gruber's plot is really clever but quite simple at the same time. I don't know what Vic Deakins' plot is. It's so all over the place. It involves so many different vehicles.
Yeah, it's like planes, trains and automobiles. There's a boat in there as well, isn't there? Because they get into a boat for some reason, and Samantha Mathis' character is hiding under a blanket in the boat, which they don't notice, and then just go somewhere, get out. It's again another ridiculous plot point. Should we talk about the death scene?
Yes, please.
Nick, flesh it out for us.
Gosh, it's death by nuke. Just to cut to the chase, but essentially there's this giant action sequence on a moving train that goes on for absolutely ages. I think it's about half an hour long. This final action, because I remember pausing it as the train sequence started, and there was still a long way to go, and I was like, "This is the end of the film," but no, it just keeps going, and it sort of boils down to a fist fight, like the movie started. See, clever circular structure. Yeah. They're fist fighting again and talking about boxing and philosophy and stuff. And then Christian Slater does a cool dive out of the train, presses something on a remote control, and John Travolta gets hit in the stomach by the nuclear missile and goes flying out. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm trouble with there's two parts of this end scene. Is at one point during their epic tussle, Christian Slater actually gets his hand on the controls. Now, previously we were led to believe by John Travolta that you simply had to either push blow up or don't blow up. There was like two big buttons at the top as part of the plot. Christian Slater gets hold of it and just starts mashing buttons. He's like, "Oh God!" and then he gets hit again. And then later on, he grabs it and then he jumps, and then not trusting a line of sight, he does a mid turn and then finds the right button to push. But I just don't know why he didn't push the button, like the one button that he needed to push. When he got the control.
I'm fairly certain that button is deactivate as well.
It's not mysterious in any way. It's just this. And then right at the end when the crash is happening and I knew at some point the large shiny point on the nuclear weapon would come into play. And John Travolta stands up and just watches this thing come towards him. He could clearly have stepped to the side.
Yeah,
but he just takes it full on in the balls.
He almost embraces it. Like you see a glint in his eye. He's enjoying it. It's the way he wants to go out. He's always dreamt of having a nuclear missile hit him and to send him flying out of a train. So he looks quite zen and pleased about it almost.
I think it was part of his plan. I think this was this is just this is how I expected this to happen.
The world's most elaborate suicide plan.
It's a good dummy, by the way. I accidentally pressed the pause button on my computer when I was watching this last night, and it paused just as said missiles going into said bollocks. And you've got a very lifelike full model or kind of dummy of John Travolta with head and everything, and so they actually spent quite a lot of the budget on that, I think, because it was pretty accurate, even though it's on for split seconds. But
did he keep it and use it in Battlefield Earth?
Potentially. So apart from this movie, and then we get the brilliant Face-Off. Was it a year after? How quickly did Face-Off come on after this?
I think it was a year. It was 97, yeah.
So what did he do after that? Because obviously, did that ruin or kind of not destroy, but did he have an issue trying to make these kind of transatlantic movies after that? Because I don't know anything he's done past Face-Off.
Well, he did Mission Impossible 2, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. I think that was like 2002, maybe. I don't like Mission Impossible 2 very much. It's a real shame. I love the franchise. It had the doves and it had, all of his trademarks, but it didn't work very well. And then after that, he did Paycheck, with Ben Affleck that was very bad. And then he did Windtalkers and with Nicolas Cage, and that wasn't great. And that was kind of it for his Hollywood career. And I think it's a real shame because I really kind of love to varying degrees his first 3 Hollywood films. Obviously, the Chinese films are incredible. Hard Boiled and The Killer and Better Tomorrow. But I have a real soft spot for these Hollywood films. There's just something about him applying his sort of lunatic, operatic, kinetic, mythic, like just completely huge, over-the-top action, and doing it with people like Van Damme and Travolta and Nicolas Cage. I just really love it. Hard Target's a film I like a lot as well. It's a film where Jean-Claude Van Damme plays a character called Chance Boudreaux, and a Cajun, and he punches a snake, and it's amazing. So, it's a shame, for me it's a big shame that he just did the 3 that worked really well, and then after that that age passed, and his type of action movie kind of disappeared, because I think it's a real golden age.
Out of the 3, The Hard Target, Broken Arrow, and Face-Off, would you be able to say which one was your favourite?
Oh, Face-Off. Face-Off is... and some people malign Face-Off, but I think Face-Off is a legitimate 5-star action classic, like absolute action classic. I may be in the minority, I don't know. I think a lot of people love it too. It's undeniably very silly, but I just don't think... I think calling a John Woo film silly is kind of missing the point, because everything that's silly about his films is also what makes them great. And Face-Off is just so crazy. I can't imagine it working with anyone else.
It's problematic now, isn't it, the Face-Off, in terms of, the whole touching the face with your hand thing would be something.
Yeah, I mean, as a coronavirus, transmitter, I think having your face completely put on someone else's face is probably a no-no in this day and age.
It's not aged well in this day.
There's a supercut of John Travolta touching everyone's face in Face Off. Just every other character in the film, he's touching their face, and it's weird. I was rewatching Broken Arrow. He doesn't touch people's faces so much, but he does smell Samantha Mathis's hair.
Oh god!
Yeah. He goes a bit Joe Biden, and he fondles. He makes up for it with fondling Nukes. I think there's more than one scene where he's sort of touching a nuclear bomb quite intimately.
Yeah, and he's very protective of the nukes, isn't he? Because he quite often tells people to stop shooting the nuclear bombs, even though clearly, as the train wreck at the end proved, they're quite impervious to any harm. So, yeah, just simply shooting them wouldn't really have any effect, but, throwing them out of a train again, no effect. So, but, he's just quite protective. He wants to make sure that little point is ready for his balls later on. He doesn't want to shut off.
I got plans.
Yeah, but there's a bit of, very early on, Christian Slater has a line, I think when they're in the cockpit, he says, it's the power of God, you get off on it. And it's so right. John Travolta's getting off on it. Whenever he's anywhere near these things, he's just having too good a time.
I just think if I was in real life, and I know this isn't real life at all, but if I was Riley Hale, I'd be having a chat with the management a long time before we were having these problems, because clearly he's an absolute psychopath, and alarm bells. I'm presuming there's an HR department in the army, so regardless of where you are in terms of the pecking order, and he's quite high because he's a pilot of a stealth bomber, I'd be having a little chat, at least 1-to-1 or on your own with some of them HR, and just saying, look, I think Vic Deakins is mental.
He keeps punching me in the face, which has no effect.
I just saw him salute himself in the mirror in the bathroom. It's a toxic workplace. But then again, Riley Hale is going through Vic Deakins' wallet and stealing $20 bills. So
yeah, no one's innocent in this film.
Oh, that bloody £20.
They definitely have a HR department, because I was reading on the trivia that the army insisted that when John Travolta came out as a traitor, not John Travolta, sorry, Vic Deacon. We'll make sure there's that differentiation between the character and the actor. He was no longer allowed to wear the uniform, which is why he changed into a lovely polo neck.
Hey, that's like that other really interesting fact I heard the other day about iPhones. Was it, what's the movie Knives Out, where Ryan Johnson said that basically you can tell who the killer is in Knives Out by the phone they use.
Oh, well, because they're not allowed to use Apple if they're a bad guy.
Yeah, so all the... I've not seen that film. I'm going to say...
Oh, fucking hell, Chris. Spoiler alert.
Had you heard this, Nick? I think you maybe on the Empire podcast they mentioned it, to be honest. I can't
I
remember.
have heard this. Yeah, I thought that was quite nice. I'm now trying to think what film it is where mobile phones don't exist. There's a film that's set in the modern day that came out quite recently, but there are just no mobile. It's a world when mobile phones were never made. And some director, I guess, got out of the whole mobile phone. How do you do a suspense movie without mobile phone? I can't remember what it is, but anyway.
What a beautiful world that would be.
The thing is, it does ruin quite a few films, doesn't it? Because you quite often go, you just phone someone, or Google Maps it.
But I got a bit of trivia for you guys. Did you know who was originally gonna direct Broken Arrow before John Woo came on board? You may not have heard of him, because I hadn't. Dwight H. Little. The movie that he decided to do instead of Broken Arrow was Free Willy 2.
He chose another psychotic character to film instead.
Yeah. A film in which Free Willy steals 2 nukes. No, that would have been a better film. But yeah, Free Willy 1 was gigantic. There were many Free Willy sequels, and I guess Free Willy 2 looked like it could have been, the Terminator 2 of killer whale films. So Dwight H. Little went off to do that instead. Just two very final things to add. Like, one, we got to mention Ain't It Cool News, the website, which was inspired by a John Travolta line in this film. And the other thing is, this was the only film in history that Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, one of them changed their minds over. So Gene Siskel originally gave this a thumbs up. Roger Ebert hated it, and he talked him out of it, so they both ended up giving it a thumbs down. And that is just wrong.
I think it is bonkers, but it's the right side of bonkers. The thing with John Woo you get, and even in the later sort of worse films, he is a fine hand when it comes to action scenes. And in every single one of his films, there's at least one scene where you go, that was fucking cool. And this is no exception at all. So I would probably recommend people watch the sort of Hollywood films before they tackle his Chinese work, simply because there is a seed quality change between the two. I mean, Hard Boiled and The Killer, as mentioned previously, they're just absolutely fantastic films, and they need to be watched by more people. But yeah, watch these first. I think weirdly, actually, Hard Target's my favourite of his, because I know Faceoff is cool, but I was a big Van Damme fan. Maybe I have to watch that again.
I always remember the scene where he's on the motorbike and he's playing chicken with a car. And then he kind of does some kind of flying kick over the car.
Slow-mo 15 times.
Hard Target's awesome.
I mean, coming fresh to this movie, obviously I know about it. And
Had you never seen it before at all, Chris?
No. I knew of it. Initially I got it mixed up with the other one, the water one with Christian Slater and is it...
Hard Rain.
Hard Rain with Morgan Freeman. I initially thought, Broken Arrow, that's the one with Morgan Freeman and the rain in the water. But yeah, I knew as soon as I saw the screenshots, I thought, this beauty, and I never saw it. But I don't know whether I deliberately avoided it, or it was because maybe I thought myself as being a bit too highbrow for this, because I went through a real twatty snobby phase with films and music around this time, so I was kind of being a bit of a dick about everything, and now I'm not. I like everything now for what it is. Now I'm getting older. But the tomato meter on this one is very low. I mean, it's a 53%, and even it's got a very low audience score as well, of 44%. Because usually you get a low like a critic's score, but then you get a high audience score, because this is what we're here to do in the bunkers, obviously, to talk about the audience-loved films as opposed to the critically panned ones. But this is a little bit different in terms of it's a green across the board in terms of Splatterhouse, which is a bit unusual. But I can certainly see that there are magical moments in this, and for its kitsch and campness, it's a really good romp of a film to just have a snigger at and find impressive for really good reasons. Obviously, just find quite hammy and enjoy it. So, I mean, we have to make a decision in terms of whether this is going to remain in the bunker or not, Nick. So, have you got any final words for us? I mean, this is not like Room 101 or anything, but it kind of...
Yeah, no, you just put it really, really nicely. That was a really nice description of kind of what I like about this film. I saw it when I was 16. It hit me in the sweet spot. There's nothing subtle about it at all. The Spanish title for this film is Nuclear Alarm, which I kind of wish that was the actual title, because it would kind of fit with the vibe of the movie. It's just fun. I mean, there's literally no subtext at all. Everyone just says what the text is, to each other. Everyone there's not a lot of depth to the script, but it's got a lot of energy. Travolta's having a great time. It's John Woo getting his hands on sort of toys for the first time. You know, like he'd done a lot of gun battles in Hong Kong, and then he comes to America, and this is the film where he got helicopters and aircraft and, you know, big jeeps, and he's just having a good time. I think that comes across. It's sort of like this mad western. It's
batshit Travolta's Genesis. You know, if he wasn't in this, they probably would have been in Faceoff, and then, you know, No Swordfish, all that sort of crazy stuff that he did thereafter, where he's basically the same character forevermore in this. But yeah, I had an interesting bit of trivia that I found, actually. Broken arrow isn't actually the term for losing a nuclear weapon. The actual term for losing a nuclear weapon is empty quiver.
Oh.
That's how I felt after the movie.
That's what John Travolta's pants after he got hit in the balls with the nuclear weapon.
Oh, I said, God damn. The thing, is that little line from Pulp Fiction, isn't it? That he just does that little homage to Uma Thurman's line, isn't it? That I say, God damn.
Yeah,
that is brilliant. But yeah, I think this is definitely being jettisoned out of the bunker, as I always say now. It's my new thing. It goes up the pipe and out, released into the air like a giant nuclear weapon onto the DVD shelves of the general public. It's on Sky Movies now. Go and download.
Go watch it.
Nick, fantastic. I think obviously we've agreed that this movie is going to be out of the bunker and released in the general public and into the wild. But what can we find you doing? I mean, I was really interested in terms of the book that you've recently published, but is it Wild and Crazy Guys? Wild and Crazy Guys. That's my book about the comedy stars of the 80s, Bill Murray and John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, Steve Martin, all of those guys. That is out now if you want to read it. There's supposedly a paperback coming, but I think it's being delayed due to everything going on. But that'll arrive at some point, and I'm just starting on book 2. Is that going to be around the similar, you not say, but is it around the similar kind of themes in terms of the 80s movie stars, or? You could say it's a companion piece. Yeah, no, it's a fun one to research, so I look forward to being able to talk about it, but I can't yet. Are you on Twitter, Nick, at all? My Twitter handle is also my name, conveniently. That was a good coincidence. Nick to Semlyen. Yeah, Twitter is really the only place. I haven't figured out Instagram yet. No, I still haven't either.
It's like there's pictures and there's hashtags. I don't understand how it holds together.
I'm at the wrong age to be getting into Instagram. I do it as a gesture of goodwill, but after that, it's all news to me. But yeah, Nick, thanks ever so much for coming on the podcast. It's been fantastic having you on, and hopefully we can get you back again to talk about another one of your not guilty pleasures. We should stop saying that, but one of your defend another movie, basically, that's been critically panned. Indeed, I would love to. So talking of guilty pleasure, Ian Rankin, the author, when I was tweeting about Broken Arrow at the weekend, popped up and just said guilty pleasure. So he does consider this film. It's one of Ian Rankin's guilty pleasures. Thanks again, Nick. Thank you, guys. If you like what you hear in terms of the podcast, then please make sure you go out there and download, like and subscribe, write a review wherever you can, and it helps us climb the ladder and get into other people's ears. So next time, Matthew, we'll see you for another movie, another critically panned, or I'm going to fuck that up. There, yeah, Matthew. I enjoy this bit of seeing you struggle to out. Why can't I ever do this? I don't know. Last week you did like a two Roddies kind of, and it's goodbye from me, which was weird. We can't just say bye. Bye's fine. I know, but I don't know why I always have to try and overcomplicate things. Maybe Nick can do this one for us. Yeah, Nick, say goodbye for us. Bye, everyone. See? Professional.